They're samurai warriors.
Were they samurai? Because if you look at the terracotta soldiers down in China, and then we know that she was talking to a Chinese board, how do we know that those aren't Chinese warriors?
Because it said SW.
It said SW.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Are you? Oh my God! No
Wait
more.
a minute. Hold on. Shanghai World.
Okay.
Is it Samurai World?
It's Samurai World.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shad on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shad on TV Westworld Edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece for the hit HBO television series Westworld. My name is Roger Roper, also known as The Raj, and alongside me, I've got my two finale experts, Gene Lyons.
We'll always have each other, boys.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And this is the Instacast episode of the week where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld right after we immediately watched it. And we're raw, we're loose, we're going to talk about what we saw, what we learned, and then preview some of our big topics that are going to come up in Tuesday's deep dive analysis. Boys, this was episode 10. This was can you call it the penultimate? It's not the penultimate, right? That means something else.
Penultimate is the second to the last.
Aha. Okay, so this is the finale. This is the end of the season. This is the episode that was supposed to wrap everything up to us. It was supposed to answer all of our questions as well as set up season 2. You know, there was so much anticipation building up for this episode. Guys, I got to ask a question right out the gate. What did you think?
Well, I want to temper this with saying that my daughter gave me a wonderful gift of a high fever and a stomach flu. So I've spent the entire day vomiting with a fever. So I don't know that I can give an honest assessment the first time through. But there were parts I thought that I liked. There were some parts that felt a bit forced. But I kind of want to hold off giving my true assessment until I've had a chance to see it at least one more time.
I think one of the most flattering compliments I've received since doing this podcast is Richard Ruggieri, one of the listeners on Twitter, said that he could hear my teeth grinding from where he was sitting while watching. And also Gillian also pointed out that they felt my pain. So it was nice to know that we have that kind of connection with the audience where they can actually just close their eyes and imagine my reaction to the show as they're watching the show. It's like my little gene code is inside of all of them.
So Gene, you and I did most of the live tweeting that we do every week during the Eastern Standard Time airing of Westworld. Some of your tweets, I mean, there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor that we do. You seem, though, realistically, you had genuine problems with the end of the way that things were being wrapped up, it seemed. What were some of your big-ticket items that you were like, this is not what I was expecting?
I think the biggest issue that I had was when they were explaining things to the point where it was just overkill. And I understand that, one of the criticisms that we had of Lost was that it brought up so many mysteries and never gave you the answers to them. And I think here is where we got an example of what Lost would have been like if they had tried to answer all of the mysteries. Maybe Lost did us a favor by not doing so because they were trying to give us the answers to everything, and then they were just beating us over the head with facts. How many times did we hear that the man in black owns a majority stake in the park or is the owner of the park? I mean, I get it. There's the question of the audience who is not listening to podcasts, is not reading up on it. And maybe for them that's necessary. But I think in a show like this, where you've set it up with external websites that people can look at and see maps of things and procedures, when you're bringing this all-inclusive multimedia approach to a show where the show is kind of a three-dimensional show, it's jumping out of your TV and getting into other aspects of your life through technology and through social media. At that point, you got to expect people are going to talk about it. And in that case, you got to respect the audience and respect their intelligence.
Yeah, and I'm wondering also, we don't know what's to come with season 2. A lot of what we're assuming here was over the top and redundant. We could find out down the road that this again was part of some other, because it's wheels within wheels and narratives within narratives. I don't think we can give a true gauge of it until we find everything out. Because in the end, you could find out again that now we believe that Ford was trying to actually give them free will all along. This could, again, be some kind of a deeper narrative. So I'm going to hold off until I see the full picture.
This mental seesaw I've been on for a season now, where I keep giving him the benefit of the doubt, like, oh, there's a twist coming. Oh, something's going to turn infinitely darker. Oh, we're going to get somewhere with this, and what I'm seeing, I don't believe. And even in the time where they try to do it on this episode, the point where they try to incorporate a plot twist with Teddy and Dolores on the beach, and then there's an audience there, I knew from the score and the way they were positioned and the lines that they were uttering that it was complete bullshit and they were being monitored and it was part of a narrative. I think that was pretty obvious to everyone.
I'm calling that the Truman Show moment of the episode, because it like all the pieces kind of fell together. I kept waiting for Teddy to get on a sailboat and then like sail out to the moon and crash out and then kind of open the door. And then Ed Harris, just kind of give a smile, and for some reason he's wearing glasses and a sweater cap or a backwards newspaper cap. Like, I kept waiting for that moment to happen. But there was one thing that happened throughout the narrative, and I got really scared because I almost thought there was a brief glimpse that maybe perhaps they were going to twist it, that Logan was really truly the Man in Black instead of William. There was a brief moment that I thought that, and I tweeted that out. Did you guys get that at all? Like, when you talk about twists and talk about being surprised, did you feel that same moment?
I didn't feel that moment per se, but someone on Twitter pointed out, they said, well, who else do people actually talk about themselves in the third person? And I was like, that's, again, to me, a part of the show where it falls flat, was they're still trying to mislead you at that point. Like when he says, oh, I knew a guest once named William. Yeah, we know it's William. And that's kind of frustrating, where it's like they're still trying to, wag this lure in front of you when we're not falling for it anymore. And again, it goes back to that idea that Richard brought up, that not, trusting the audience's intelligence.
Well, let me ask you guys this, right? So, and again, I've learned my lesson of not to say I told you so after what happened in the 109 Instacast, but what we've discovered throughout the season, and I've said it on Twitter multiple times, is that it seems as if the most simple answers were the ones that we were searching for the entire time, right? The answers to the questions were always the simplest ones. Would we have enjoyed the finale more if we weren't so engrossed over the last, what have we done here, guys? 28 episodes of this podcast. We do it 3 times a week. If we weren't so engrossed in our theories and the number of episodes that we've done each week, doing the blog and the Westworld Telegraph that we do and the engagement we do, like, would we have been more engrossed had we didn't know this or we didn't predict some of these?
Yeah, I agree with that. I found myself, as the episode was going on, realizing that a lot of what we had talked about was coming true and they were kind of fitting together. And I think that we did it to ourselves by spending so much time analyzing and all the theories that it did strip away some of just the pure enjoyment. We tried to say last week, really to sit back and enjoy it for what it is, when it's a beautiful piece of work. It's the performances that are it. So I think a lot of kind of the problems that we're going to have with it were caused by ourselves. So I really want to take that with a grain of salt and really think, how would the average Sunday night viewer feel about the episode, as opposed to us who've really dissected it, pulled it apart, looked at it 50 different ways. And I think there will be a big difference in those two.
Dick, you mentioned the performances. Roger and I were talking about the fact that some of these performances actually seem rather hollow. And you and I talked about it too, D. Basically, that you had interactions. Sizemore just seems like a throwaway at this point. Every scene he's in, you're just like, what is he even doing on the show? And then you've got the interaction with the Man in Black and Dolores, and that should have been heartbreaking. That should have been moving. That should have been horrifying and visceral, and it just felt like nothing. And maybe that's the point. I mean, maybe we should give them some credit. It doesn't feel like anything, that this story is the love here, the romance here, the passion there has been exhausted completely. Maybe that's the point, but for me, it was just, even then, when I see those same notions expressed by Anthony Hopkins, I'm feeling something. I'm wowed by what's going on the screen. I did not feel that way about the confrontation in the graveyard.
Well, I think that maybe that's what the right, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm going to play the defense lawyer for the writers in this particular case, because it seems as if this whole journey that the Man in Black was on, that William was on over the last 30 years, everyone's been warning him that it's not for him, that that he doesn't need to go there because it's nothing that he's going to be excited about. And it was a letdown to you, Gene, because it was a letdown to him. Everything that he's been searching for, this deeper meaning, it turns out just to be a toy maze that, by the way, HBO could have made a fortune on this Christmas season had they put it on HBO's website.
But here is the thing. In the last scene, when you see him get shot and he gets that grin on his face, he is getting what he wants, actually. He's getting a high-stakes game. Like, this is, in a sense, beyond anything. For William, if that experience in the park changed him, everything, and he says it himself, everything is a game to him now, so the better the game, the more satisfied he is. He doesn't give a shit about Dolores anymore. This is about the bigger and better and more complex and more exciting games. So I think he's going to be a fascinating character going forward. I don't think he dies in this scene when we get into season 2.
Yeah, and we talked about some of the relationships that didn't seem to click. Some of them really did click. Like Armistice, Hector, and Maeve, I would watch almost an entire show of just the three of them either trying to break out of the park, their adventures in the park. I could watch them, and I just kept thinking, Armistice the entire time after they modify her and throw her aggression up, and a couple of her other attributes they change. Those three I loved. I thought that all worked. Did you feel the same?
So you'd watch a show which basically comprised of stormtroopers shooting at arguably the worst action heroes we've ever seen on screen. They did nothing impressive, nothing inventive. There was nothing that wowed me. There was a little bit of sass, a little bit of character, but for the most part, they just stood there and shot at things and somehow could not get hit. Now, were they getting shot and just not succumbing to wounds, or were they literally half the guys that walked in just stood there and stared at them? They didn't even shoot.
I think they did get shot, but I'm not talking about the tactics. I enjoyed the little glances. I thought they were funny, like Armistice blowing kisses to Felix and Sylvester. I liked it. I thought they were cute. I thought she was badass. So yes, in everything we see, it's a trope. The stormtrooper, it's the defense force or whatever the quick reaction force is. They can never shoot. They're inept. But it makes sense in this, that if you follow that Ford has rolled back all the security measures, and then on top of that, Maeve goes and modifies them again. I would expect them to really struggle. They might have been working with a minimal staff. So I really don't think that the quick reaction force is also the highest paid in the park. They're like mall cops. Did
anyone get like the sense, like in Terminator 2, when John, Sarah Connor, and Arnold are attacking Skynet HQ, and there's all these inept police officers that are happening, and the Terminator is just going around and shooting them in the legs, and then, it has the pop-up on his HUD that, 0 casualties. Like, that's how I got, like, that same vibe. But there were some cool throwbacks. So, like, if you've seen the 73 movie and you see, like, those blast doors trapping in the narrative department and the over big synth that's going on, there were some really cool nods back to the original movie that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, speaking of nods back, one thing I did appreciate about this episode was the nods back that kind of was a retrospective of the season. When there's the rifle toss between Armistice and Hector, going back to the heist, or when, the Man in Black, I'm sorry, when, who was it that said that you can, when William says, I'll give you the first shot, which is what the echoed season 1 from the Man in Black saying it to Teddy. I love those little nods to itself, showing the show's not taking itself too seriously, but also, again, feeding into that idea of cycles and loops.
Yeah, I think you also see that with him dragging along Logan, and then he encounters El Lazo, right? And there's kind of like that, that's going to happen. But let me ask you guys this. Is Logan still riding that horse naked? Like, where's Logan?
I had a couple questions about where's all sorts of people. So where's Stubbs? Where's Elsie? Again, I get that. Leave some mystery just for season 2. I appreciate that. But with Logan, yeah, I wasn't quite sure. I thought, he's going to send him. He puts the black feather in his hands, basically, which I think has some symbolism we'd have to look into. What does that mean? But also, then he sends him on his way. I didn't know if he was sending him back saying, look, I'm never coming back to the entrance and you be safe, or if he's basically just sending him to his own demise, knowing that nothing out there will kill him, but maybe he'll just die.
I thought possibly they had to look at each other like he was trying to kill him. If you're sitting naked on horseback with your hands tied and the horse starts galloping, I can imagine that it wouldn't be too hard to take a really bad fall off of that and maybe break your neck. And I was also waiting possibly that this was going to be like the end of Thelma and Louise, like there was a cliff or something that he was sending the horse off, that he really didn't want to kill Logan. But overall, what did you guys think of the transition from William, from white hat to black hat?
So I think this is really more of a question of, were we satisfied with the answers to all the questions that we had been presented throughout the season, right? So we knew, at least I did, that we knew William was going to be Man in Black, right? The positive thing that I can say about it is I enjoyed that they got that done early on in the episode. Like, the first 15 minutes was just answering all those questions that I felt I knew the answer to. And to be quite frank, I was okay with it. I was like, all right, good. They're getting through it. They're not really dragging it out. Gene, I think that you might have had a different opinion of that.
No, when I read that tweet, I thought you were being facetious. And I was like, I agree. I agree with you, Roger. Why didn't they leave some of these mysteries to the end? Why are they answering them all now? It felt like there was this elasticity of the narrative where it was really, really quick, and then it kind of slowed down and then sped up again. Alan Swanson, one of the listeners, tweeted, he said, you know that feeling you get when the teacher says 5 more minutes, then pencils down, you know? That's how it felt with the writers in the show. Like, they just had to, like, cram in a bunch of answers. What I did appreciate, though, was that they made... they allowed the story to slow down at certain parts and let us savor some things. Again, Anthony Hopkins in every scene, I tweeted it, saving the show. Just, you cannot... Like, I stopped taking notes. I don't even realize that there's a computer in front of me. I don't know where I am. It's a complete suspension of disbelief. I believe there's a bunch of characters on the show, and then there's actually Dr. Ford in front of me.
And do you remember that we had gotten some heat last episode for talking about casting news, where we had mentioned who was coming back for season 2? So now do we believe that was a complete just ruse that Jeffrey Wright had done?
No, absolutely not. And I think, you know, again, not to get defensive about this, but the point that we made, and I still stand by that point, is that casting can mean all sorts of things. How many times on a show have we seen a character brought back if only for a flashback, or if only for a piece of history, or if, you know, by that rationale, when we're watching, Star Wars movies, we'd be like, oh, dude didn't die, he's still around. No, it's you're remembering Obi-Wan, like, what, you know, whatever. So again, blue glowies, guys, blue glowies.
No, but I think he's back. He has to be back.
Listen, I'm not getting. Listen, I've pissed off enough viewers for me to make any kind of hypothesis or assumption in that realm whatsoever.
No, I do believe that Jeffrey Wright is going to be the head of the park going forward. It's Bernard's park now. I think that's established. Ford is out. He's done, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. So one of our listeners tweeted at us, do you think that Ford was building his own host down there, like the hidden host that, what is it, episode 7, or that Big D did his CSI investigation and came to the conclusion that he was building an Elsie bot that we still haven't seen. We still don't know we still don't know what he was building down there. Could it be a host version of Dr. Ford?
I don't think it is, and here's why. I think Ford was comfortable with the finality. Like, he's an old man. He understands that he's dying. Now, again, there could be the twist. He's actually a host, and he's making another one himself. But here's the thing, is that he recognizes that his era, you know, of the park is over. The park cannot be a theme park from now on. That's anybody who thinks that it's going to come back as Westworld Season 2 and it's just going to be a theme park is crazy. That is done. This is war. War has been declared.
So do you think that Dr. Ford was the hero all along? I think I made this statement, you know, halfway through the season, that I believe that Dr. Ford is the hero. I stand by that based upon what I saw today. That one of the things that blew my mind and I really enjoyed and was the highlight for me personally is watching this is when he points to the Michelangelo painting, you know, down in his secret laboratory, and he points and he says, you know, it took centuries, or, you know, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said what really Michelangelo was trying to say here is that it's not really the creator, it's not God, it's actually the mind that gives us consciousness. I love that. I mean, again, I think it might have to do with the fact that Sir Anthony Hopkins is just like the best actor of our generation, but also like that speaks volumes of what this whole 10 episode arc has been about, and I really enjoyed that.
Roger, I think it also speaks volumes to the fact that you're a big Dan Brown fan, so shame on you, shame.
No, I think we had suspected for a while that possibly Dr. Ford could be the true force of good, and I got the sense from watching this again, and I'm hallucinating with a fever, that it was Ford's intention all along to give consciousness to the host, but only when they were ready.
I don't see it that way. It brings to mind, you know, Pol Pot or Ho Chi Minh. This idea that you have this dictator essentially who's determined that he's going to strengthen his people so that they have a position on the world stage, right? Or look at Kim Jong-il, right? The idea that they're not going to have food. They're not going to have free movement. They're not going to have free thought. You're going to restrict everything, but you're going to make them strong. Well, what's the point of being strong or evolving or whatever else if you're going to be tortured the whole time? They didn't get the right to make those decisions. He made the decision for them. So to me, if anything, he's progressing a storyline. He's moving a people forward.
No. I'm going to have to err on the side of D on this one, Gene. And I get where you're going with that. I completely understand from a dictator perspective. But it seems as if Dr. Ford came to the conclusion that for his final narrative, he was going to lead the individuals like Maeve and the individuals like Dolores and Teddy. He was going to lead them on that journey. He knew the only way to unlock that consciousness. He understood what Arnold was doing, but he was the only one that could actually do it. And by invoking that pain, by invoking that memory, by completing the reveries that Arnold had started, he's led them to a path of free will and consciousness and the fact that they can pull the trigger. He says that it wasn't Dolores that killed Arnold. Arnold was directing. Arnold was the Pol Pot. Arnold was the dictator. Dr. Ford is actually the true hero. He set the host free.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree on that point. What I'm saying is that he made the choice for 30 years to continue operating in the park to the end of getting them to the point where they are. Essentially, he's taking nature in his own hands. He's taking evolution into his own hands. He's deciding for them how they will progress. It's like the question of, like if you had to be consulted, like to go through something incredibly painful to make yourself stronger, you're not getting a choice in that. You're being told you have to in order to make you stronger.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think the reason he did that is because of his own pain that he felt from his best friend and mentor being killed? That was his cornerstone, in my opinion. And that's what I've taken from it is that, and we can talk about this more in the deep dive. This is the Instacast. But my takeaway from it is that his whole pain was Arnold dying, that loss of his mentor. That's why he created Bernard in his likeness so that he could, kind of get over that. But then he, after years of battling the board, he finally decided, you know what? I'm done. I'm tired. I'm an old man. I've fought for 40 years. I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to go down with, I'm the Captain Smith of the Titanic. I'm going to go down with it, and I'm going to let this, I'm going to let the people swim.
I think that's a great point, and I love that for a couple of reasons. One is it explains that phrase that keeps coming back when Dolores asks him if he's an old friend, and yeah, you cannot be an old friend. Even if Arnold wanted to die, the thing that killed him, you cannot befriend, right? Like, and people have asked it all the time, what does that mean? And I think that speaks to that. But also, I've had the feeling from jump that there is no way that Ford intentionally kill, people said, oh, he got him out of the way or whatever. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. If he wanted to, he would have done it cleaner and more secretively. This was something painful for him.
See, I'm going to kind of throw in my military background here. Yes, for the last 30 years, he's made the host suffer. When you're in combat, and essentially the hosts are in a war for freedom, you have to essentially accept casualties. You have to be willing to put people you care about into situations that you know they might not come back from. If Ford truly knew that his creation was not ready, imagine the torment that he went through. Because in the end, we see that he actually did care, that he had to do what he had to do to get them to this point where he says, now I feel you're ready, and he's willing to step aside. It must have been a rough 30 years, not only to pretend like you don't care, but also then to put them in situations that are torturing them, but all in the end that you knew it was what was needed to do to win the war.
I don't want to belabor the point, but you guys scare me.
A couple other things that we haven't talked about here, and I know we're approaching the upper time limit that we want to hold for these Instacasts. And again, we'll dive deeper into these in our deep dive episode on Tuesday, and of course, probably a lot more on the Telegraph on Thursday. But Maeve's whole storyline, the big question that I have is that was all created by Ford, right? She's supposed to escape. She's supposed to go on a host draft. She's supposed to get on this train and then realize her whole consciousness test, her Maeve maze, if you will, is to look at that little piece of paper that Felix hands her and say to myself, escaping is not as important to me as going back for my daughter.
No, I think he truly expected her to escape. And that's one of the things with consciousness and true freedom of will. You can't predict what someone will choose. I honestly believe that Ford set her on the path to freedom. And in the end, freedom wasn't what she chose.
What's interesting is she hasn't still gone back in a sense. Like she could still, get out. I was watching that scene and thought, oh, what a beautiful way to indicate to the audience that her humanity is still intact, that she sees this mother with her daughter. And at that same time, the voiceover is saying, that they can, that they're going to have the power to choose. And then I see her looking at them. I go, oh, the idea is that you're going to set Maeve out in the world, and she's going to decide how she's going to react to humans after all that's been done to her. And then she's like, looks at the slip and gets off the train. I go, fuck, that wasn't it at all.
My whole thought of the fact that her test by Dr. Ford, because I believe it's God. I believe that Dr. Ford was truly playing God. The idea of, I was raised Catholic, guys. So my idea of God in the way that I was raised, and the way that I understand religion, is that you are provided choices along your path of life. And the idea that God gives you these choices and the free will to make those decisions to, kind of lead you on those things. So I feel like in this particular case, Dr. Ford was testing Maeve, just like he tested Dolores by putting the gun in front of her. And it was Dolores, I believe. I don't think that was Dr. Ford controlling Dolores to shoot him in the back of the head. I think that was, we're supposed to believe that was actually Dolores' own free will. But when it comes to Maeve, even though I appreciated the fact that she was coming conscious and got off the train and wanted to go see her daughter that she knows is a robot, there was still a part of me that was like, damn it, I wanted season 2 Maeve out on the loose. Like I wanted Maeve in the city. Like I wanted that.
Is Maeve's daughter a robot? I mean, in the sense of a host in a physical body that moves around?
Without a doubt. 100%. Yeah, because let me answer that question. I apologize, Big D. I'll answer that with another question. The way that I think that she's a host is because Man in Black killed her, right? And we know that she hasn't aged, so I believe that she still exists. Like she's a host, is what I mean.
Yeah, and I think her cornerstone is so strong that it was more important for her, because that's kind of who defined her being, who she really was. That even if she did escape, without that, I think she would have felt like it was incomplete. So I get the vibe that she's going back to find her daughter for the two of them to escape. I don't think she's going back there to, rejoin the loop or any of that. And I don't think everything is a test. I think Ford finally gave them consciousness. And it's not a test to see what they do. True free will is a crapshoot.
Yeah, but don't you think life is? I mean, but I don't mean like it's a genuine, like I'm going to sit down, I'm going to answer these questions, I'm going to tell me my personality. I mean, like everything in our life is a test or a choice, right? Like today, while you're at work tomorrow, you could choose not to do any kind of work and accept the consequences, right? Some might label that a test. I could decide not to wear a seatbelt and go speeding down the road at, 100 miles an hour, right? That I'm testing the limits of my own humanity in a sense. I mean, I guess I'm giving it a label. I apologize. But
which one of our writers had written in and said, in studies of the brain, that actually said our decision-making process almost kicks in after we've made the decision. Who we are is kind of how we cope with the decisions we've made.
Yeah, to clarify that, he was saying basically that narrative section of your brain makes up the story of why you did something after you do it. So it's not the decision being made after the action, but rather that there's a like you said, a coping mechanism that says, this is the story of why I did that.
The other question that I had from a character perspective, and I know we've joked about, Stubbs and Elsie and all that kind of stuff, and we'll get to that. But, a couple things I wanted to point out, that the person who shot the gun at the end with Ghost Nation, that was Clem. That was not Elsie, correct? I just want to make sure, because I rewinded it and I look again. Some people were asking if that was Elsie. That was Clem, correct?
Yeah, that was Clem version 1.0. But also now we have to reevaluate the entire abduction of Elsie and Stubbs. In some deep, dark place, Bernard might have known what was coming. If he truly cared for Elsie and Stubbs, abducting them and putting them off in safekeeping would have saved them from what we assume the entire slaughter that's going to come of the banquet.
Taking that a step further, Big D, it could be Ford even pulling those strings and saying that he doesn't want those two to be harmed in all of this. Although, again, playing God, all the other guys are okay. The tag team, go ahead and go and kill them.
So the other character question that I had is Sizemore seems to be working with Charlotte this entire time, but then we see him down in cold storage, seemingly opening cold storage or setting up for the escape of the cold storage army. Whose side was he truly on? Was he on Ford's side or was he on Charlotte's side?
I think he was on his own side, and he kept trying to play whichever one would further his career. When he thought Ford was going out and Teresa was around, he tried to leverage that into, becoming Ford's replacement. I think all along he was on Charlotte's side. He went down there because Charlotte had told him, hey, why are you here? You have something to do. And the entire scene of him going to cold storage was nothing more than the reveal of him being dumbfounded. Uh-oh, cold storage is empty. And then we wonder, where did they go? And we see him.
Oh, okay, I get it. So that I completely missed that. I must have been live tweeting or something like that. So he goes down there to do his whole Charlotte deal and then realizes they're not there.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying that.
You know what that means, gentlemen? That means somewhere out there in those trees, in those woods, creeping and crawling around, there's one Peter Abernathy.
That was going to be my other question. Is Peter Abernathy on the train or is he out there with Ghost Nation?
No, he's out there in the woods. Lewis Hertham is out there cracking skulls. We're going to see him again.
Yeah. Were we disappointed that any questions weren't answered? And if so, what were they?
No, I think all this, let's take in the deep dive, because there's so much. I mean, we're at 30
I think
we're at
minutes perfect spot right now, yeah.
And I think there's so much. I mean, I just want to go get my lab coat, some lube, and Hector, and just take some time to really digest this.
I will say this one thing. I am glad that there were no more hosts, human reveals. You know what I mean? That was a lot of questions. I know we did a bet on it after, episode 1 way back when, but there were no host human reveals, right? So we're going to have to tally up the score and figure out who's getting the Bullet Rye whiskey bottle at the end here. But I'll leave and I'll sign off the Instacast and get ready for the deep dive with this one question, gentlemen. It doesn't have to be a long response, but are we excited for season 2 or are we pessimistic?
I'm excited. I think a lot of the groundwork that was laid here, it's a complicated, multi-layered story that you're telling. Much like the narratives and the loops within the park, it's difficult to do. I think we'll look back on it, and was it perfect? No, but I think it was a difficult job that they had. Going forward, I think they have a clean slate. The base rules of the park are established. Going forward, they have almost a free slate to create whatever they want. And they were forced into this by the original story and the original movie. I think going forward, I have no doubt that it's going to be a great story with no constraints.
I know that the show would be significantly less popular if it was told the way I would want it to be told, but in looking back on this entire season, all I could think about is shows like The Wire or The Killing, where you had one storyline at a time and you just let it play out over a season, right? So, for instance, Westworld, you could have just stuck with Dolores, the incident at the farm, and Teddy, and that could have been a season. I know people are going to balk at that, but think about the idea of how much more completely we could answer these questions. I feel like a show with this much depth is going to always feel rushed. I know there have been people on Twitter and saying that the show is too slow for them or doesn't move. I don't know how that's possible, because especially this one was going at lightning speed the entire time. There was so much shit happening that it bears a second watching. But honestly, for all the action, the fireworks, the reveals that we had in this show, I felt like from a character development perspective, from a production perspective, I wasn't terribly impressed. I'm holding my breath on season 2. I'm definitely going to watch it. But I would say that the finale makes me less excited about season 2 than episode 9 did.
Yeah, if you wanted an entire one linear progression with a storyline that involved nothing but a farm, I've got some Walking Dead fans I want to introduce you to. I am excited for the Westworld season 2. It's going to be interesting where they take it. I hope that they get out of the park. I want to see some Maeve in the city. Maybe that's season 3. I'm not sure. But guys, I cannot wait. I wish we already had a date, but it looks like we are going to have to wait 12 to 18 months until we see this again. So that's the bad news, right? The good news is Shat on TV is continuing. We are going to have a big announcement on our show that we're going to do. Gentlemen, is it safe to say that we'll have that announcement ready for the listeners on Tuesday, or should we say by Thursday? By Thursday at the latest, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, all right. So we'll have that big announcement. We're going to have our deep dive released on Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe. That'll be a jam-packed episode. And then we're going to complete the week with our listener email. Make sure you email us. We're hosts at shadontv.com. That is our Westworld Telegraph, where we take the best fan emails and analysis, and we read them back and respond to them. After that, we will be doing a joint post-season recap with our friends over at Golden Spiral Media that does a fantastic podcast called Beyond Westworld. We encourage you to check them out, subscribe to them. Aaron and Troy are great guys. We're going to do a joint wrap-up show with them, recording on the 11th, dropping on the 12th. So make sure you follow us everywhere on social media. We're at Shat on TV on Instagram and Twitter. We're also on Facebook. What else, guys? T-shirts. We still have T-shirts available. We've reached out to our boy Lewis Hertham. He's going to be joining the show probably after the first of the year based on his schedule. We've also reached out to Sylvester Ptolemy, and he's checking with the brass to see if he can come on the show. So we're still going to have some Westworld news, and fans, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, share with a friend, leave a 5-star review. It's how we grow the show. And what else, guys? What am I missing here?
So I want to say a big thank you to everybody who's been Snapchatting with us, gotten some great video. It's unbelievable to see people watching the show, listening to the podcast in Paris, in Canada, all across the United States. It's really, really cool to watch how you're incorporating the stuff into your lives. It's very, very touching. It means the world to us to see that. And also, I appreciate that no one has sent me any dick pics yet.
Yeah, also big shout out to Gillian and Mary, who sent pictures of themselves wearing the Shat on TV Maze and Abernathy Farm shirts. That's great. If you've received your shirt, please Snapchat Gene. He'll send you back a shirtless picture. Put it on Twitter. Put it on Instagram. Just tag us. We're at Shat on TV. That's the Instacast, guys. Thank you so much for this journey. I want to give a big shout out to the fans who've been with us and stuck with us. I think the 3-episode format really set us apart from other podcasts. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've brought a friend along. And, we are independent podcasters. We all have day jobs. I don't want to get too into it, but we're hobbyists, right? We're not looking at this to make a lot of money. We're truly doing it because there are people listening, and the amount of people that have listened, my mom still doesn't believe it. I mean, that's my mom. She thought that I was going to be a success, but she didn't think that people actually ever want to listen to us. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Very much big, guys, I don't know if you guys want to say anything else to the fans, but that's what I got to say.
Samurai World.
Yes, Samurai World.
Is it Samurai World?
SW.
Yes. SW.
Wait a minute. Those weren't, listen, I didn't want to show my ignorance in terms of cultural, appropriation.
They're samurai warriors.
Were they samurai? Because if you look at the terracotta soldiers down in China, and then we know that she was talking to a Chinese board, how do we know that those aren't Chinese warriors?
Because it said SW.
It said SW.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. No.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Shanghai World.
Okay.
Is it Samurai World?
It's Samurai World.
That's a perfect ending.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, so much for listening. We'll see you on Tuesday for our deep dive. Follow us. I'm at Roger_Roper on Twitter. Big D is Dick_Ebert at Twitter. And Gene is Gene_Lyons_ on Twitter. Follow us, and we'll be your friend. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on Tuesday.